In this section, we will review the steps necessary to obtain Auger data. We have already mounted the sample, introduced it into the main chamber. We have then positioned the sample at the focal point of the analyzer. We found and documented the area for analysis with high-resolution SEM images. Let's begin by setting up the electron gun with the proper parameters to obtain Auger data. This is our TV image with 0.1 nanoamps of current. We also are using the 4 mil aperture. To obtain Auger data, we normally want current probably at least 10 nanoamps or greater, and again, it depends upon the sample. Kind of the rule of thumb is we want as much current as possible, still being able to resolve the features that we want to see without damaging the sample. So what we'll do first in order to increase our current is we'll change the objective lens aperture from the 4 mil aperture. We'll then go to the 8 mil aperture. Notice we now have more current. We need to turn the SED multiplier down, and a quick and easy way to do that is to use the soft key number 2 auto video. That will automatically change the SED multiplier, contrast, DC offset level, and brightness to give us the best image. This is the 8 mil aperture. We now want to go to the 16 mil aperture, and once again, using the auto video, soft key number 2. We can now bring that into a sharper focus. We want to increase the current a little bit more. We have increased it by opening the objective lens aperture, going from a 4 mil aperture to a 16 mil aperture. Now to increase the current, we will change the condenser lens and open up the condenser lens. So in our SEM menu, we notice that our condenser is using function key number 14. And as we slew the condenser lens down, we will be increasing the current to the sample. We can see that on the TV image. That again, as we slew the condenser lens and we increase the current, we will need to occasionally use the soft key number 2, the auto video. We also want to try to keep it in focus, so we'll use the fine focus. We can now open up the condenser lens again. I am using the shift key and the slew so that I can slew the condenser lens relatively quickly. At this point again, I will hit the auto video, focus the image. You can see that we can still resolve most of the features, so we can use even more current. So I will go back to the condenser lens and again slew the condenser lens, auto video. I have now run out of the ability to focus using the fine focus. Because the pot is at one end, I will bring the pot back to the middle, and I will focus using the coarse focus, which is function key number 10. And I will then slew the coarse focus until it is in focus. Go back to function key number 14. Open up the condenser lens even more. Auto video. And focus. Now we're getting to the point where it's not too easy to resolve some of the features. We now again see that the beam is stigmatic. What we can do is bring it to the best focus somewhere in the middle. Then let's adjust the stigmators, function key number 11, and we will slew. First I will slew the up and down stigmators until I get the best image. That is worse, so let me slew using the down arrow. That's also worse. So there's our best image there. Let's then refocus using the fine focus knob, and then use the left and right arrows. And you can see that we can very easily correct for astigmatism and get a very sharp image. Now as I defocus, you can see that it defocuses evenly. So let's bring it to the best focus. We also want to register to our registration mark. So what I will do is use the image shift, which is function key number 3, and then using the arrows, I can shift the image until it lines up with our registration marks. Going back to the SEM menu, we see that our beam current reading is function key number 15. We want to toggle that to on. Once we activate the beam current reading, it will be displayed on the top status line of the SEM menu, right next to the emission current. What we can now do is, by pressing function key number 15 and toggling the beam current reading to on, first the SEM image or the TV image will blank. We are now applying a 200-volt bias to the specimen stage. We see that the current that we have is around 57 nanoamps of current. If we want 100 nanoamps, what we can now do is, while we are monitoring the current, we can slew the condenser lens. So again, with beam current reading on, I will press function key number 14, and I will slew the condenser lens. Now I will slew the condenser lens a little slower. Notice now that we now have 62 nanoamps of current, so I want to slew the condenser lens down a little bit more. Again, notice that it's between 6 to 9 seconds to update the beam current reading. Again, slewing the condenser lens and waiting for the update to occur. .75 nanoamps. I'll slew a little bit further. We now have 114 nanoamps. Let me close the condenser lens a little bit until we get about 100 nanoamps. We have now 113 nanoamps, 109, 89. I've gone a little bit too far. I'll open the condenser lens again. We now have 106 nanoamps of current. What I will do is leave 106 nanoamps. Now it's measuring 109. Let me just go one step further. Again, whatever current is being read here will also be entered onto our data as the current at which it was acquired. We now have 106 nanoamps of current. What we can do is stop the beam current reading by toggling function key number 15 to the off position. And our electron gun is now set at 108 nanoamps of current. Going back to the TV image, we see that with more current, we again are saturating the SED. So we will use function key number 2, auto video, to reset the SED multiplier. We then want to focus, function key number 10. We can then fine focus, and notice that we do not see much stigmation, so it looks like they are set properly. Let's once again do an auto video to give us a good contrast. And we now want to shift the image using function key number 3 and the arrows in order to again align it with our registration mark on the TV image. With these parameters, 108 nanoamps, a focused image at 5000x where we want to do the analysis, we now have the electron gun set for obtaining Auger data. To analyze this sample, what we would like to do is identify what material is in the 3 different areas. We see a certain material in this area, which may look different and maybe a different material than what's located here. And also there is something different in between, which is in this area. So what we would like to do is analyze this sample in 3 different areas. To do that, we can go back to the SEM menu. We want to exit from this menu, which is soft key number 8, which then returns us to the home bank. And we would like to display the areas menu, which is function key number 18. In the areas menu, we can define areas, which would be soft key number 2. We also could define where we want to do line scans, which is called line define, soft key number 5. Or we could define areas where we wish to do Auger mapping, which would be soft key number 8, entitled map define. We will be talking about the line define and map define functions later. At this point, what we would like to do is enter the area define menu by pressing soft key number 2. In the area define menu, we have 2 different definitions for the area which we wish to acquire. We can either analyze that area in a point mode. Looking at line number 1, type of area is point mode or an area mode. Line number 2 tells us the coordinates where the point or area would be located. And soft key number 1 is labeled define area. Once we get the proper coordinates for the point or the area, we then enter that area or point, entering those coordinates using soft key number 1 to define that area. Going back to the TV, we see that when we enter the define areas menu, we have a crosshair located in the center of the TV. This defines where the point will be acquired. What we can do is we can move the crosshair by using the arrow keys located in the lower right corner of the keyboard. Again, by shift and pressing an arrow, we can move fast, and without shift and moving the arrow, we move slow. What I would like to do is define point number 1 in the center of this pad. So I will move the left-right keys and then move the up and down keys until I am in the center of the pad. I now want to define that as point number 1. Going back to the computer screen, we see that now my coordinates have changed because I have changed the x and y coordinate of the point. Looking at the TV image, when we press soft key number 1 to define the area, we notice that it gives us a dot which indicates the position of point number 1 and also labels it with a number 1 to define that point. We see on the terminal that area number 1 has been defined with the coordinates, the x coordinate being at 290 and the y coordinate being at 195. We also see that the coordinates to which the crosshairs returned was in the center of the TV screen, being X 255 and Y 255. What we would now like to do is define another area, and this time we do not want that area to be a point, but in fact we want to define either a square or a rectangle as the area. To do that, we press function key number 1, which allows us now to change the type of area, and we will toggle that to area. Going back to the TV screen, when we enter the area by pressing the enter key on the keyboard, we now see that instead of a crosshair, we have 4 lines where we can now define an area. By looking again at the terminal, we see now that the coordinates for the upper line and the left line are at 170 and 170, and that is function key number 2. Function key number 5 will allow us to change the lower line and the right line. Returning to function key number 2 and pressing that function key, we can now change, again by slewing, using the arrows, the upper line and the left line. If we go back to the TV image, we will be able to watch those lines as we slew them. Again, using the shift key will allow me to slew that upper line fast. Without the shift key, I can slew it slowly. What I would like to do is define an area on this material. So to do that, I will slew my upper line to this point. I will then, using the left-right arrows, slew the left line. I now want to slew my lower line and the right line. To access those, I press function key number 5, and then again, using the arrows, I can then slew those lines until I'm able to define the area I wish to define. Once I have that area located, I can then define that area by pressing soft key number 1, and we now see that that area has been superimposed on my TV image and has been labeled as area number 2. This is a live TV image on the sample at the beam current and beam voltage and all of the settings we set up for the Auger analysis. We can also see that once we have entered that area or those values, we now go back to the preset values where I can now once again slew the upper line, the lower line, the left line, and the right line to define a new area. Or I could go back to a point and define area number 3 as a point. So at this point in our setup, we can either define points or areas, and we can mix them. Number 1 does not have to be a point. It could be an area, in the same way with point number 2. We can define up to 20 different areas or points on the sample. Looking back at the terminal, we see now that area number 2 has been defined with the upper bar a setting of 260, the left bar a setting of 70, the lower bar a setting of 310, and the right bar a setting of 130. The coordinates for the upper, left, lower, and right have now gone back to the preset settings of 170 by 170, 340 by 340. What I would like to do now is define another area, area number 3. Again, looking at the TV, we will now acquire data on this material. Area number 2 will tell us what is located on this material. We still don't know what is in between, so let's define an area that encompasses only the area between these two bars. So what we will do is move the upper bar. The left bar is in a location which I would want. I am not overlapping this material or this material, but I am in between. I now want to change the right bar, so I will have to press function key number 5, which allows me then to access and move the right bar. And let's bring the bottom bar up just a little bit. We will now define this as area number 3 by pressing soft key number 1. That will enter those coordinates and label that as area 3. Going back to the screen, we see that now area number 3 also has the proper coordinates. For the upper bar is at 170, the left bar is at 90, the lower bar is at 210, and the right bar is at 241. If we did not like any of the coordinates for either area 1, 2, or 3, we could delete one of them by pressing soft key number 3. It says delete one. It would then ask which of the areas we wanted to delete. We could enter that area number and it would delete that area. If we wanted to delete all of them, we could just press soft key number 2. At this point, we have the 3 areas set up where we wish to do Auger analysis, all defined with the coordinates in point mode as upper and left X and Y coordinates, and our rectangles and squares with 4 coordinates defining that area. We can now exit the Define Area menu by pressing soft key number 8.